Good morning, LinkedIn. Jeremy Blubaugh here, Chief Prospecting Officer at CoinFlip Marketing, where we teach the art of personalization to help flip the odds in your favor when it comes to your client outreach. I'm joined by a friend today, a 25 plus veteran in the sales industry. He's held numerous positions in the financial services industry, started off as a divisional vice president, even ran a national sales manager at RS Funds. And most recently, he's the president of Developing the Next Sales Leader, where they actually help you make sense of the art and science of sales. So, welcome, Colin Lake. Glad to have you.
Jeremy, glad to be here. Always love to get connected with good people, and in particular, I love your stuff and the way that you're trying to help people connect better with their people. So it creates even more enthusiasm to be part of this.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to have you. And so we'll get right into it. So I was snooping around on your website, uh, kind of looking at your coaching. Obviously, that's the main part of what you do. You obviously help people obviously get more meetings with their best prospects, kind of drive more revenue. But I saw on your website you have a pretty in-depth form if someone wants to kind of start working with you. And I guess I kind of want to start with the mindset shift that you might need to become a better salesperson, because I'm assuming that's why that form's there, is you could kind of weed out the people who are interested versus aren't interested, actually be taking it to the next level.
Yeah, so it's called the executive intake form, and it's just like any other intake form, except that there is lots of science associated with the number of questions and the way the questions are designed. And it is all working to figure out like if this person is truly interested in taking up what they're asking for. It's like people say, I want to get better, I want to get more meetings, and although people want to do things, they're not always willing to do the things that they need to do in order to get the things that they want. And so that's the first thing this thing is designed to do. And then the second thing is it once all of the answers are answered, it then yields a score which says, like, here's the likelihood of success post event. And once we get that score, we then talk to the folks afterward and say, hey, your score was X, which means you have a low um, opportunity here to
Hmm.
like pick up on the lessons and use the lessons that we're going to talk about, and the coachings and trainings and ideas and strategies and all that stuff. Like the odds are lower. They're not necessarily in your favor that you're going to take this stuff up. So maybe we don't coach you. Maybe this isn't the right time for you to do it. And at the end of the day, like if someone's paying us to coach them, Jeremy, we want to make sure that they are getting real value, and not just real value over the 8 or 12 or 24 weeks that we coach our folks over, but over like the rest of their lives, like this sustainable, lasting success from the coachings that we do together.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because as you know, I like to flip people's odds in their favor. So, sometimes it's best to hear no and kind of move on. So, within that form, any kind of specific thing that you start with, kind of like client fills it out, you say yes, let's go. Like, where do you start with the process with a client to kind of hit those three questions that we're going to talk about in a second?
Um, so there's two types of coaching. One is inquiry based coaching, and two is context based coaching. And inquiry based coaching is exactly what it sounds like. Like, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Like, Jeremy, when are you at your best? Why are you at your best then? And what things hold you back from staying at that level or staying at that place? That's all inquiry based coaching. It's a very popular form of coaching.
Hmm.
It's the one that most people do and get paid the most money for these days. The other side, which is a little bit harder to do, which is the context based, meaning like, I've done what you've done. I know how to do it at a really, really high level. And to do that at a really, really high level on a consistent basis and a sustainable basis. So the answer to your question is, what are the first couple of components of the coaching program that we implement? We start with the inquiry stuff. Like, we want to understand everything we possibly can about the candidate or the person we're currently working with. Like, everything. What are their drivers? What are the things that hold them back? What are their fears? If they have this imposter syndrome that I think like so many people deal with, like they're not sure that they actually belong in the position they are. Like, what gets you to feel that way? And so all of the beginnings of the coaching sessions we do are inquiry based. We're trying to learn as much as we can about the people we talk with every day.
Gotcha. Talk about that syndrome. Is that would you say the kind of the biggest holdback from taking people to the next level, or is there, as you get into the your 6 year of coaching here, is there anything else you found that kind of holds them back?
Um, so the imposter syndrome is a big one. Like I work with a lot of financial advisors, and a lot of financial advisors, that they have never really looked themselves in the mirror and said, like, am I completely capable of doing the things that I tell people I'm capable of doing? And by the way, Jeremy, the secret is they are. They just don't know it because they've never really collected themselves. They've never really thought, like, okay, this is how I do that. Okay, that makes sense to me. This is how I do this. Okay, so that makes sense to me. This is how, like, a lot of people just have like fix this when that happened. Then they go over here and do this, and then they work on this down here, and then they're working on with their staff on this. Like it never has gotten put together in a neat, organized fashion, and therefore they don't have it straight in their brain. So they're not exactly sure that they have all of the capabilities that they suggest they have. And so once we are able to collect that piece of it, like get them to feel like, okay, I am capable, I am in the right place, I am able to help the people that I think I can help. Then we move over to that like comfort syndrome, which is okay. So like I've gotten to this place where I am capable, and I know I'm capable. I'm consciously capable. Now I'm starting to make some more money, and I seem to be just fine here. Even though I thought I wanted to go all the way up here, but this seems to be fine. This is a little bit better than I was, and so that's the next stage that we help work hard to help people work through.
Yeah, I feel like there's not just in the financial advisor, even the wholesaling world, you got a lot of people that are here and they could go here, but like I said, the comfortable factor kicks in. So, all right, so let's get into the three things you help. First one, obviously on your website, you said to help get more meetings with your ideal clients. You know, Obviously we kind of talked a little more about the mindset because of the form. Kind of talk a little more about how you coach your clients to make that happen. How do you get more meetings with your ideal clients?
Yes, and this is even more appropriate to the wholesaling world. Let me broaden that. It's more appropriate to the sales world. Like we're all looking to meet in a more impactful way with our clients.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a generalization. I said we're all working to. It's not true, but like a really really high percentage, right? Like a lot of us are trying to get in front of more people that we want to be in front of, and we're trying to do it more often. We're trying to do it in a more impactful way. So this idea of like getting more meetings with the right people is harder and harder to do. Um, and so the first thing that we coach people on is what does a really good buying process look like for your client? In other words, many coaches and many salespeople would suggest like you've got to get your sales process right.
Hmm.
And what I say is you can't get your sales process right until you know what the right buying process is for your client or for your prospective clients. And so once you understand what like their best buying process would look like, then we can start building our like outreach process or our process of getting those more meetings. So that's the first thing that we work on, Jeremy.
So this buying process, and I know you posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago about this. I mean, the buying process has changed, and it's changed even more dramatically with the events that's happening here in the United States and across the world. That I think you said like 50% of buyers almost have made the pandemic's made it easier, but they're getting more information online. So I'm assuming there's a lot of data out there that you can take to kind of explain what that buying process might be, whether it's a financial advisor or an investment wholesaler.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly the case. I got this. I've seen this. Like, there's never been so much information available to us so quickly. Like we just have this access to so much information. So if we're a salesperson and the reason why we're asking to meet with our clients is based on, let me tell you something about our products, or let me tell you something about our industry. Well, I can get that myself. Thanks, but I don't really need you to do that for
Hmm.
me. And then so this gets back to the point of to your question is what does get them jazzed up? What does get them excited? And again, that part's a little bit harder to figure out, although not impossible. It's like very possible to figure out. Just they'll take those right steps to understand what is impactful to your clients and prospects, and that's how we market to them to get those meetings.
So I mean, I'm just thinking kind of obviously ideal client, but then too within that ideal client, if you're a financial advisor, what resonates if you go after doctors? What resonates if you go after business owners? What resonates if you go after dentists? Is that kind of where you're going with what you're talking about here?
Precisely. That is exactly what we're trying to say. Is like, so if you're prospecting doctors, the first thing we would say is doctors is a whole mess of people. Like let's go
True.
after cardiologists. Let's okay. So then a cardiologist. Okay, what things do cardiologists want, need, care about? Like what? Let's understand that world, and then let's make sure our outreach and our social media and our website and all those things to support that. Um, Talk about that or create this platform for intellect based on those things that your target market cares most about.
And so to say cardiologist, since you mentioned that, and let's say the financial advisors said that's my target market. I mean, do you come in and help them then define that message, or is that kind of up to the financial advisor to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it?
So what we'd like to do, Jeremy, so that's a really important question. I don't know how many people we have listened, but that's a really important question because like, the old adage of do you give them a fish or do you teach them to fish? And so ideally what we would do is we would then say, okay, so here's what they care most about. And then let's take the art and science of, by the way, I'm in my that's awesome. My room I have like glass all around my room. If you ever watch my videos, you've seen that glass all
Hmm.
around the room. And we lived somewhat in a rural place, and there was a fox like right there, right
Oh,
outside
wow.
the window, right there. And he's a raggedy son of a gun too, so he's probably shouldn't be out during the day, should he? Um,
He's
anyway,
listening in, getting some good information here. So
that's exactly right, Foxy. Um, so the idea is like once we've identified like what the cardiologists care most about, then what we'd like to do is share as much art and science of outreach as we can with our clients, and then we work together. Like, what would a subject line look like? Let's go as basic as that. What would email content look like? What would our when we get introduced to someone, what would it look like? What would our outreach to centers of influence look like? When we're looking to have them help us get in front of more cardiologists, like we're trying to help them figure out how to do it. So again, we're creating that lasting and sustainable success.
yeah, that's great because I think I've seen some outreaches. I personally get a ton of outreaches from financial advisors, and sometimes they're 3, 4 paragraph long. The first one's talking about them and their credentials, and it goes immediately delete. I throw it straight into the trash can because it's completely irrelevant about who I am, what I want, what I'm looking for, and if it's good, I respond. Obviously, I have a financial advisor, and I let them know I'm happy, but I acknowledge that hey, they're doing it right. So I appreciate your teaching that. So on the art and science of this outreach, because I love that. That's what I get into here at CoinFlip Marketing a lot. So talk a little more about the art, side of it, and then we can kind of go back into the science side of it. You know, anyone in particular you think is more important, or kind of walk through more about how you define the art of the sending the right email, sending the right thank you, etc.
Yes. Okay. So there is words that drive open rates and drive comfort in with your outreach. Like I've talked about this one in the past, but the word blue. If you use the word blue in subject lines,
Hmm.
it drives open rates up like noticeably. And this isn't just sometimes. This isn't just in some industries. This is everywhere. So like that's a real broad example, but we give like a cardiologist, these are words that they care about most. These are the things that they care about most. So maybe our subject lines, maybe our um, emails would have those type of words included in all components of your outreach. Maybe those words would be on your website. Maybe when you get introduced to a cardiologist, you would include those words in your introduction. When someone says when a cardiologist says to you, what do? You don't want to say, I'm a financial advisor. I'm with this broker dealer. I've been in the industry for 25 years and I've been a certified financial planner for 20. Like those things are all credential oriented to your point. But what we'd like to say is, what are those words that cardiologists think a lot about? Maybe it's innovation. something like that. And so, like, you would take those words and put them in there. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about that. When we're talking about that art piece of it. And I think back to you, like, with your personalization piece, you can almost do like a bit of this mass personalization. If you choose the right words based on the group of people you care about most, then you can do some personalizing on a larger scale.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm assuming red doesn't do quite as well as blue in the
You are
subject
correct.
line.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
uh, so talk a little more about the science for the people listening today. How would you define the science then part of the outreach? Obviously, that's the art side. What would you kind of identify to people listening today what the science side is?
This to me is like is like a bomb type thought, like a power thought. If your email subject lines are between 38 and 42 characters, your open rate doubles. So, like, that to me says, like, every single email that I send, I would have to have it between 38 and 42 characters if it's an outreach email. Like, if I'm emailing you, Jeremy, I probably would be less apt to count because
Mhm.
we're buddies. We'd send an email, you'd respond, you'd open it up, and I know you'd take a minute to look at it. But if I'm reaching out to a client or in particular a prospective client, I need that science on my side. I need to know that I want to get that email open. So that'd be the first piece of information I know. The second piece is we have to be somewhere between like 25 and 32 seconds on how long it takes to read the email. We also know that one link and we know that one attachment increases their willingness to click the link or to open an attachment. But we'll see emails all the time, like there's 4 different attachments, there's, 5 links, and, like, it's one of these, the spray and pray is one way to think about it. I call it the two-finger salute, like, I send an email and I, cross my fingers, like, "Geez, I hope they'll respond," the two-finger salute, that happens so often, and it doesn't need to because there is science behind a lot of this stuff, and it's been done for us, in particular these last 18 months, so we ought to use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I talk a lot about that with people when it comes to outreach as well. And there's tools out there now that can obviously help you. Too, I think too, how does your message even appear on a cell phone, right? I would assume, I don't know what the stats are. I would think that three-fourths of people are probably looking at your emails on their phone. And if it's not formatted correctly on to a Gmail account on an iPhone or a Google Android, I mean, it's probably going in the trash. And there's companies out there that can show you what it's going to look like. So, I would assume that kind of goes in the science part as well. Like, make sure your email looks good on the device that they're going to open that up on. And I don't think too many people even think or put thought into that process.
Mm. Jeremy, let me ask you this. You did a post a couple of weeks ago about Grammarly.
Mhm.
What does Grammarly offer anything along those lines, or is that just all they do all the right commas, periods?
Yeah, it's more of a comma, period. Is this the right there or there? Because obviously sometimes people miss that stuff. Another tool I do use is called Quillbot that can actually help you change the sentence structure. So to be more creative, to be more standard, to be more professional. The company I was just talking to you about is called Validia. They actually can, and this is probably more for like a large sales organization. This is probably like not like a financial advisor would pay to do this, but think of like your asset management firms or maybe like a Northwestern Mutual. They would go in there and say, hey, here's what the message will look like. And they can show you what it looked like on iPhone 11, iPhone 10, iPhone 12. They can actually find out, hey, if you use this word, kind of what you're talking about, will it actually get through? Is your emails actually going into spam? How do you get out of that spam bucket into that potential client's inbox? So for those listening or for you, Colin, if you never checked them out, you should check them out. They do some pretty great work. And it's actually, because I've talked to them, I do a lot of just kind of studying what's out there so I can guide people in the right direction. It's actually not that costly for a big organization to sign up for them. I think it was, like 10 grand for a
Mm.
big organization to make sure their emails are getting delivered and look good on the devices that people are going to see them. I thought was a no brainer. So
And say the name again, Validia.
Validia, I think it's VALIDATY.com.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I got, it's one of those things. Whenever I get my LinkedIn emails or my LinkedIn outreaches, if it's good, I respond. And they show they did a little bit of homework to why I should talk to them. I talk to them, and this is a company that reached out to me like 6 months ago. I'm like, oh, I mean, I'll probably never be a customer of yours. I was honest with them because I'm a small business, and maybe someday I will be. But I can talk about your product to other people because I talk to large organizations all the time. So
How much do you get the or the LinkedIn outreach? I feel like I'm getting like 2 or 3 a day. Do you get a ton of those?
I get 10 a day.
Yeah, you do.
Uh, and it's partly because I have like chief prospecting. If you ever have chief anything, people scan your LinkedIn profile, look for the word chief, and then they automatically assume that you're responsible for making decisions, which I am. I'm the sole owner of my business, but I mean, I get stuff about HR departments. Things are just completely irrelevant to my business, and I usually I respond, say, hey, like, sure, we can chat. What do you want to chat about? And 9 out of 10 times they don't respond because it's some bot just sending it to you with the click of a button.
So I learned something there. Take president off of my LinkedIn thing and take chief take chief out of my LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I'm getting all these emails.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't bother me because, like I said, I learn sometimes. Sometimes people, I got
Right.
one, I don't know, like 3 months ago. I mean, this guy read my profile and sent me a just beautiful personalized message. He even took some of my posts and kind of took it, and then ended up not being a service that I needed. But I'm like, first of all, I kind of want to post about that. He didn't really want to post about it because it's part of his kind of secret sauce per se. But like I responded to him, we had a conversation, just wasn't a fit. But I'm like, I'm going to acknowledge the amount of effort that you put into it because I've never seen that before. Thank you. And I got my attention, and I think that's what it's all about. Is you can't get people's attention in sales, which is probably both art and science. You're done. And that's really at the end of the day what I try to do is I sometimes call myself a professional attention getter. How do you get a prospect's attention in a unique, different way to make sure they respond to you, to get you, response ratios north of 50% when you do some type of outreach.
Teenagers have that same role, chief attention getters. My teenagers seem to have that role in this house.
I have four of them. I don't have any teenagers, but I got 4 kids, and they're all four chief attention getters. So thanks for talking about the art and science. Let's roll down into kind of the revenue part. So you got the meeting. You use the art and science of the outreach to get it. Now how do you generate more revenue from that meeting, or maybe even more revenue from your existing clients? And what type of process do you teach there?
Yes. So thanks for this, because this is where my like the whole origins of this business started, with this concept of we do not ask enough questions. Okay, I'm not the first one to think that. I'm not the first one to talk about that. But that is that is the origins of the business. And then supporting that is there's a reason why we don't ask enough questions. So we talk about like the why piece of that, why you don't ask enough questions. And like, how maybe you could ask more questions. And then the like, as you get bigger here, it's the types of questions we ask ultimately determine two things. And by the way, Jeremy, these are like the two most important things in any conversation. Number one, they determine your willingness to listen. Like if you ask a junk question, you're probably not going to listen that well because
Mhm.
you're going to know the answer. You already have, you're playing chess. You're a step ahead. I know what you're going to say here. I'm just going to ask this while I daydream here for a second. And then the second thing, like if you ask a really, really good question, it determines how willing the person on the other side of the conversation is to respond to the question and respond to the question thoughtfully. So I'll just give you one example. Many times salespeople say, and this isn't even really a question, although just about every salesperson I've ever worked with considers it one. They say, tell me about your business, right? It's a statement. It's really a statement. It's not a question. And so
And I want the information now.
right. I mean, it's crazy, but that is asked very often. And so the person on the other side of the conversation, I mean, people do like to talk about themselves. So you can suggest that maybe they do want to share that. I would say after the 67th time you've answered that question, you're probably sick of answering the question, and you know how to answer it in a way that gets the person like out of your office quickest. And do you really want the answer to that question? By the way, the answer is maybe you do. But really, what you want to know is I don't want to know about your whole practice. I only want to know about the part of your practice that impacts me and my ability to get business from you. And so, what we're trying to teach is like, what questions could you ask that fully engaged you and fully inspired like a thoughtful response from them? And that is what we call the well asked question, We do that training for advisor firms, for wholesaling firms, for sales organizations throughout the sales world. But yeah, so that's like the core of everything we believe in.
I love the well asked questions, and you know I I wholesaled for 10 years. That tell me about your business. I first started as a wholesaler. That was the question I always asked, and realized never realized the impact I was having, or I should say, no impact I was having when I asked that question, because it's probably the fifth time you got asked by a wholesaler that week. Tell me about your, oh, geez, here we go again, right? Um, Whereas I learned, if you came in and you kind of maybe elaborate on this, if I was more specific, did some homework. Hey, Colin, I noticed that you focus on cardiologists. How did you get into that type of business? And be very, very a little more specific. Whatever I can find out about them to show that I did some homework and ask some very intelligent questions about them to get them talking specifically where it can guide me to where I go. I obviously made a huge difference in my wholesaling career. I'm curious on the kind of the financial advisor side, though. So, what are some of these questions? I know you don't want to give out all your information for free, but maybe you can maybe share one for any advisors listening today that who don't have kind of these well thought out questions that you might be thinking to ask to kind of help them. I know it's
Yeah.
a very generic question or generic broad view of it, but
Um, okay, so there's two terms that we all think about when asking questions. Those terms are open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, and that has been written about that, and lots of people have talked about that, and all of us recognize at some level the impact of each. The main thing or the way I'd answer your question, although I'm not going to directly answer it, hopefully I'll answer it in a more impactful way, um, is open-ended questions are the ones that we're trying to coach our folks to answer. Okay, so that's one. But the thing to note, Jeremy, is that people are most likely to ask closed-ended questions at the most critical components of conversations.
hmm,
So many times when financial advisors are talking to clients and prospects, the client will say, no, not necessarily interested in that, or maybe that doesn't make sense, or I can't meet right now, or I don't want to connect you to my CPA, like some version of like a no. Financial advisors, and this is more of a human condition, are so apt to follow that no or that challenge or that speed bump up with a closed-ended question like, is there a reason why? Or can I ask you that same question later? Or is it okay if I follow up with you in a couple of weeks with that? Every one of them is closed ended. So the first thing we're teaching when constructing questions, I should say the second thing, the first thing we're teaching is what we talked about is the question has got to be asked in a way that you want to know the answer to it and they want to answer it. Okay, that's one. Second thing is we want people to be aware that when it's crunch time, when you're in a complex discussion, a complex like situation, a closed-ended question is what's most likely going to like spew out of our mouth. So we have to train ourselves or retrain ourselves. Okay, what's a really, really impactful, open-ended question? And then I guess this would ultimately be the answer is I would like that question to start out with what and numbers associated with it. For example, Jeremy, okay, so I understand that. What are the three things that drives you to there? What with numbers? What are the two or three things that got you like thinking this way? Those type of things that requires great listening from me, and it's going to most likely inspire you to like be thoughtful with your response.
that's phenomenal. I like that approach but I think to your point, I think we can all learn those questions, but if we don't have that trigger to kind of remind ourselves, okay, Colin just said no. Now triggered to ask that open-ended question, I think is probably the hardest part. And maybe I'm wrong there, but I would think that's be the hardest part for me, is because we're so comfortable, right? I'm just gonna say, hey, can I follow back up with you in a few weeks with that? It's comfort. It's natural. We do it. Been doing it for years. Whereas if you get that trigger right, and then you probably, to your point, get way more revenue or way more sales from having that kind of open-ended question.
To back it up, yeah, Jeremy, I love this thought here. Um, Over the last 2 million years, we as human beings have evolved. And the human beings that have lasted are the ones that are able to avoid confrontation, conflict, real difficult situations. So when we get ourselves in a conflict driven situation, the reason why we are asking these closed ended questions is we're trying to avoid the conflict. Um, No, I can't meet with you right now. Is it okay if I follow up with you in a couple of weeks? We want out of that situation as quickly as possible. What we're usually doing in those situations is we're trying to like soften the situation and find the quickest way out of it. And so what we have to do is like just like you suggested, just right on. It's the hardest thing to do. It is the biggest challenge. Take a breath. I recognize what I'm likely to do here. Now, let me pull out one of these what with numbers questions. What are the three things that what are the two or three things there? If you had to think about that differently, what would be the one thing that you would what with numbers?
I love that. I mean, and I love the example of the evolution over the last 2 million years.
Right.
You know, we 2 million years ago, and probably not longer than ago that we're just trying to find something to eat and run away from the dinosaurs, right? So,
Right. Right.
all right.
Uh,
Well, we're right here at 11:30. Any kind of last word of advice that you might want to share with the audience about what you do at over at your company there, and also to maybe kind of share where people might be able to find you, maybe give out your website, your LinkedIn profile, etc.
Yes, yeah, I will. Thank you for this, and thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully, there's one or two nuggets there that all of or everyone individually can take with them. One thing that I would ask people to take is when you ask a question, as quickly as you can, speak the words. Remind yourself that I need to make sure that this question is delivered in a way that I want the answer, truly want the answer, and they want to answer it. It's that give and take. That give and take will yield the proper equation between this two ears and one mouth. The idea is using proportionately, right? And so, like, how do you do that, Colin? As a better salesperson, how do I do that today? And like in particular in a virtual world, like it's really important in a virtual world that you're not doing all the talking, because if you are, the person's probably going to be scrolling around on their screen, getting notifications, and shiny objects are going to distract them. And so, like, the more we're asking questions, the more we're listening. If we can control ourselves to be fully engaged, because the question we ask is one that we want to know the answer to, these virtual meetings will be way, way, way better. So the website is Colin. Oh, yeah, it's not Colin. That's my email address. Website is developingthenextleaders.com. All four words, developingthenextleaders.com. DTNL.com will take you there too, the acronym.
Mhm.
But that is the website. And then, obviously we're all over LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter under the same channel.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks for all the nuggets today, Colin. To those listening, hope you guys took away some stuff you can take back to your sales practice today. And we'll wrap it up here. And everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday.
You're the man. Always enjoy our time together, Jeremy.
Yep. Thanks.
Hey, brother.